The Cuban president has arrived in Argentina ahead of Tuesday's inauguration ceremony for Alberto Fernandez. Life returns to normal in Dominica following last week's presidential elections. And France remains paralyzed due to a massive transport strike set to enter its sixth day. Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo and this is From the South. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel has arrived in Argentina for the inauguration ceremony of Alberto Fernandez as president. Upon his arrival, Díaz-Canel took part in a ceremony at the monument of General José de San Martín, honoring the liberator of Argentina. Alberto Fernandez's inauguration will take place on Tuesday, with various heads of state attending the ceremony. Díaz-Canel was the first leader to arrive in Buenos Aires ahead of the event. Monday is the last day in office for Argentina's outgoing president, Mauricio Macri. Edgardo Esteban reports.
We're at the end of a cycle here in Argentina with the last day of President Mauricio Macri's government. He's not made any self-criticism in his final appearances, and that includes a 45-minute documentary shown yesterday in which Mauricio Macri presented the key moments of his presidency. But it didn't acknowledge the profound crisis in which he leaves Argentina. One symbolic sign of the change can be seen here in the Plaza de Mayo. They've taken down the barriers that separated the square, where the mothers of the disappeared, for example, always marched, from the presidential palace behind. So today, it becomes once again a square for all the people. And this shows the expectations here for the swearing-in of Alberto Fernandez, which will take place tomorrow at 11 a.m. in the Congress. After that, at 6 o'clock in the evening, there will be a party for the people here in the square, with both Alberto Fernandez and Cristina Fernández de Kirchner taking part, to celebrate the beginning of this progressive government, which is generating so many expectations amongst the people of Argentina.
Thank you, Edgardo Esteban, for that report. Last Friday, Argentina's incoming president, Alberto Fernandez, presented his cabinet. They'll have the difficult job of trying to restart the country's economy and deal with Mauricio Macri's massive loan from the International Monetary Fund.
With only hours to go before stepping into the top job, Alberto Fernandez cleared away all doubts and announced the new ministers who will make up the new administration. He opted for a big cabinet.
We have the opportunity to begin a time of change. I know very well the moral qualities and technical abilities of all those who will work with me. I am happy because this is a team built on the basis of unity.
Santiago Cafiero will be the new cabinet chief, one of the posts that was never in doubt. He's been Fernandez's right-hand man since last year. Felipe Sola, an experienced politician, but with no diplomatic background, will be the new foreign minister.
We have to tackle the problem of hunger, of those who earn least, and who now face inflation at 57%. This is a priority for us.
Martín Guzmán, the new finance minister, is well respected in the academic community. He has worked with the Nobel laureate Joseph Stiglitz and is an expert on public debt. He has presented the new president with an Argentinian plan for renegotiating the foreign debt, which should avoid a default and gain time, while the new cycle of growth begins.
We believe Argentina has a promising future ahead of it. We are convinced that in spite of the difficult situation we are in right now, we will overcome this with the help of all Argentinians and the implementation of our new president's correct policies.
Various departments will once again have ministerial status, including labor, health, science and technology, as well as public works, culture and the environment. 21 ministers in all, representing all the strands of Peronism that make up the Frente de Todos coalition, and with the task of coming up with concrete solutions to the country's major challenges.
Moving to Bolivia now, during the weekend, the National Congress of the Movement Towards Socialism Party named Evo Morales as the director of their electoral campaign. The Congress resolved to maintain unity among the social movement leaders and members in order to organize the upcoming elections. The MAS is demanding that the Legislative Assembly begin a trial against Janine Áñez, in which ministers, the police, and military will be probed for genocide and crimes against humanity. Trinidad and Tobago and the European Union have agreed to the installation of a commercial-scale solar panel system via a solar park at the Piarco International Airport. The solar park will have an annual generation capacity of over 1,004,000 kilowatt hours. According to a release from the Planning and Development Ministry, the project will begin during the first quarter of 2020, with implementation taking place over a period of 48 months. The EU is funding the project to the tune of €4 million secured under its European Development Fund unit. Grenadian Senator and Minister of State with responsibility for the National Disaster Management Agency, Winston Garraway, has been arrested and charged for assaulting a journalist. The victim is said to be a reporter, Calistra Ferrier. Police charged Garraway after 3 months of an investigation. He will appear in court on a summons from the Police Prosecutions Department. St. Kitts and Nevis's former Prime Minister Dr. Denzil Douglas has threatened legal action against the British newspaper Daily Mail for a story he describes as totally false, malicious and libellous. On Sunday, Daily Mail published that Dr. Douglas was detained at Gatwick Airport 3 weeks ago after he tried to leave Britain with €70,000 in cash. The former Prime Minister, now UK Privy Councillor, denied being arrested at the airport on November 16th or at any time. He said the article is receiving the attention of his lawyers and accusing Kitts Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris of peddling the falsehood. Life is getting back to normal in Dominica after the tense election campaign last week. The Labour Party won a sweeping victory on Friday, giving Roosevelt Skerrit a third term as Prime Minister. All the observers' missions, including that of the OAS, said the vote was free and fair. We were joined by our correspondent in Rousseau, Alejandro Kirk, earlier today.
There is greetings from the seaside, from the bay side, where the news today is that this cruise ship docked in this morning. This is a political statement in itself because it's a testimony of the stability, tranquility and peace that is reigning in the country. These ships were coming in a rate of about 3 to 4 a week, and they stopped after the violence that was ignited by the opposition right-wing party, the United Workers' Party. This is over. The victory was, like you said, so sweeping that also the statements by the observer missions left no room for doubt about who won the elections, and the elections were fair, free and fair. So the city, the small town of Rousseau is blooming again today. Vendors are selling their stuff all around the ship, this bayside, where many of them are putting up their tents. They're selling T-shirts, they're selling food. The visitors are enjoying the island, touring it, going to the falls, going to nature, which is, the attractions of this island. And also this reinforcement of self-assurance that the country is at peace and that this important source of income for Dominica will keep coming in, and there will be no more disruptions. That is at least the hope that we have for now. Obviously, the conspiracy against Prime Minister Skerrit is still going on. They want him out, and they will keep trying from abroad, from the external sources that they have, to try to overthrow him. But so far, it doesn't look like that's going to be very easy there.
We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The main streets of Bogotá turned into a giant stage at the weekend where famous Colombian musicians performed in support of the national strike that has lasted more than 3 weeks. More protests and stoppages are planned for the coming days.
This is where people usually come to practice sports on Sundays. Now it's a stage for artists to protest. In this song for Colombia, actors and more than 40 groups, including well-known singers, joined the national strike.
We are here as a part of a strike, giving courage to it, believing that if we unite, we are stronger. We must unite to fight, because we want a better country, a better present for everyone.
Thousands have come to accompany them. They are expressing their dissatisfaction with the situation in the country and with politicians who they believe are undermining peace, like the former president Álvaro Uribe.
We have come together because we believe that we have many reasons to march. We believe that the protest is just because it is not a matter of the right or left, or of political parties. We are here for dignity, because we believe that people have to be heard.
Artists and citizens demanding better health and education, and no more murders of social leaders, no more violence. The mobile stage traveled 7 kilometers, raising their voices through music.
We want the government to adopt a different attitude. We want people who are willing to listen and change things, because the people are asking them in a peaceful and non-violent way. In this way, we support what is going on and want to keep people's spirits up.
There is no sign of the strike coming to an end. New demonstrations are planned in the coming days, with pot-banging pans and other protests demanding respect for human rights, the environment, diversity, and economic improvements.
2 people were rescued on Sunday in Nairobi, Kenya, 2 days after being buried in a 6-story building collapse. The death toll has risen to 10 as search teams continue to look for survivors. Reports say people trapped in the debris were screaming for help, but the sounds of their voices died down as time passed. The governor of Nairobi, Mike Sonko, has appeared in court to answer corruption charges leveled against him. Sonko pleaded not guilty to over 30 charges of money laundering, receiving bribes, and conflict of interest. He is the latest top official to be charged on corruption in Kenya and is alleged to have benefited from a $3.5 million irregular procurement transaction. When President Uhuru Kenyatta was elected into office in 2017, he vowed to fight corruption, and several officials have so far been charged. Thousands of Algerian youths have continued to protest against the ruling elites and upcoming elections. The youths are not happy with the holding of elections scheduled for December 12th, since most of the candidates come from the old administration. Algerians have been demonstrating twice a week since February, which led to the resignation of the former president Abdelaziz Bouteflika. After his resignation, protesters kept on striking, calling for all the officials who worked under him to resign.
I think it's a continuity of the system, since the heads are the heads of the old system that was rejected by the population. Moreover, it's empty political programs, so here we talk about things that are unachievable. With our economy, it's like selling dreams to little kids.
In Guinea-Bissau, outgoing President José Mario Vaz has announced his support for former Prime Minister Umaro Sissoko Embalo ahead of the second round of elections on December 29th. Sissoko Embalo will face off against another former Prime Minister, Domingos Simoes Pereira, with campaigns set to begin on December 13th and end on December 27th. Elected in 2014, Vaz failed in his bid to get re-elected, coming fourth in the first round with 12.4% of votes. Sissoko Embalo came second with 27.6%, while Pereira scored 40.1%. The new Latin American Cinema Festival is underway in Cuba. This year, the event celebrates the 60th anniversary of the Cuban Institute of Cinematographic Art and Industry, an institution that has left an indelible cultural legacy on the island.
This is how the young Cuban band, Real Project, honors the experimental sound group from the Cuban Institute of Cinematographic Art and Industry. from a contemporary vision and with musical concepts that draw from jazz, funk, and world music.
We brought together all these sounds along with ours, always respecting the music and the ideas, which I think are a great contribution to our sound and our generation.
In Cuba back in 1969, the experimental sound group combined music, cinema, and the revolutionary principles. Their idea was to create music for the new Cuban cinema. This in turn created a cycle of experimentation and creativity that managed to surpass the very institution where the group came together.
This was a group of rebellious youth who were interested in and affected by what was happening in the island in 1969. The world itself was changing, and young people were more convinced than ever that they could affect change. Countries were being liberated. The Cuban Revolution inspired Latin America. People were fighting to change their lives, and music was instrumental in this process.
Echoes from that project can still be heard today in Cuban music. Real Project reinterprets famous hits, using new technology to adapt to today's tastes and expectations.
The experimental sound group is the big bang of the new trova. Back in '69, the group came together thanks to Alfredo Guevara and Aide Santa Maria, who were there through the most difficult of times. They were protecting the sound of our nation and the sound of the revolution.
As such, Real Project pays homage to one of the cornerstones of Cuban music and cinema.
We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The French High Commissioner for Pensions held a final meeting with some union leaders hoping to end the transport strike currently gripping the nation. On Wednesday, the government will present the full details of its plans for a single points-based pension reform that does away with dozens of more advantageous plans enjoyed by workers. Critics of the plan say it will effectively force millions to work longer or face curtailed benefits. President Emmanuel Macron's determination to push through the reform sparked a nationwide strike that's been ongoing since last week, effectively crippling the public transport system for 5 days straight. Commuters struggled to get to work as most of the system was shut down on Monday. This includes a bus strike in Paris where just 2 of the 16 metro lines were operating as normal. Hundreds protested outside India's parliament on Monday over the government's legislative proposal to give citizenship to religious minorities from neighboring countries, but not Muslims. The Citizenship Amendment Bill provides that Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, Parsis, and Christians fleeing persecution in Muslim-majority Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan can be granted citizenship. Currently being debated, Muslim organizations believe it forms part of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's agenda of marginalizing India's 200 million strong Muslim minority. It's a claim Modi denies.
Committed to the Indian Constitution, they are not committed for the Assam Accord, they are not committed for the secularism, except the movement is on, movement will continue and will fight it.
Shops, schools, and offices were shuttered in the Palestinian city of Hebron as protesters clashed with security forces on Monday. Demonstrators are opposed to a plan to expand Jewish settlement activity in the Flashpoint city. Fatah, the party of Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, called for the strike on Saturday to confront the settlement offensive targeting the city and its old town. Last week, Israeli Defense Minister Naftali Bennett ordered his office to begin the planning process to convert a former Palestinian market into settled housing, potentially doubling the number of Israelis in the West Bank city. At least 5 people are confirmed dead and 8 remain missing after a volcanic eruption hit a New Zealand tourist destination. About 50 tourists were believed to be on the island when the eruption happened. 23 were rescued, and it is feared no one else survived the eruption. A no-fly zone has been declared over the area. The U.S. government has dropped its case against the Gray Zone editor Max Blumenthal and a member of the Embassy Protection Collective, Benjamin Rubinstein. The case rested on an accusation by a Venezuelan opposition activist who claimed that Max had been assaulted her while they were delivering food to Venezuela's embassy in Washington, D.C. We spoke to Max about the events.
This is part of a pattern of the right-wing Venezuelan opposition in Washington, whose leadership is directly being paid by the U.S. government, targeting their political opponents using law enforcement as a weapon. We saw this happen recently to Code Pink founder Medea Benjamin, who was almost hauled out of her house on the basis of false charges by Carlos Vecchio, the fake ambassador of Juan Guaido's minions, falsely accusing her of assault. So the government obviously judged that it had no case against me. I guess they didn't want to go to trial. But one of the most interesting things we've learned is that on the night of the alleged incident, where this false accusation is derived from, the Secret Service call logs have disappeared. Pretty much all recordings that the Secret Service made at that time have mysteriously disappeared. So raises a lot of questions about the disappearance of evidence and the collusion between the Secret Service police who are outside the embassy and this violent right-wing Venezuelan mob of opposition hooligans.
26-year-old South African activist Sosibini Tunzi has been crowned Miss Universe in an event filled with colorful displays. Tunzi is the first black woman to take the crown in 8 years. According to her biography, she is engaged in the fight against gender violence and is an advocate for natural beauty. The 26-year-old earned cheers during her closing speech, a new segment of the competition in which she talked about wanting to empower black women who look just like her.
I grew up in a world where a woman who looks like me, with my kind of skin and my kind of hair, was never considered to be beautiful. And I think that it is time that that stops today. I want children to look at me and see my face, and I want them to see their faces reflected in mine. Thank you.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Until next time.
Innovation.